Hello, everyone. So my name is Ali Kanvelshi. I'm the head of corporate affairs, the vice president of corporate affairs of Huawei Technologies in Canada. Huawei is sort of a world leading multinational in the telecommunications space. So I'm really excited to be able to speak to you and answer any questions you have. Um, what I'm going to focus on is the following, given kind of the nature of the audience. So I'll tell you just a little bit about myself and my background. I won't spend too much time on that. I'll talk a little bit about Canada and kind of what I see and what we see as sort of the advantages um, of studying in Canada and kind of and sort of the economy in Canada, especially in the tech space, which is obviously what I focus on. I'll talk a little bit about Huawei, what Huawei works on globally, as well as in Canada. So you have sort of that background and kind of, what we see as some of the challenges that we as a company are focusing on. And then I'll end with a few sort of final thoughts of, maybe some advice that I think might be helpful to you. If at any point anyone wants me to address a different topic or have any questions, just, shoot over a question. I think there's a mechanism to send those questions to me. So, like I said, I'm the head of corporate affairs of Huawei in Canada. Huawei is a Fortune 50 company, so it's one of the 50 largest companies in the world by revenue. We have about 200,000 employees, and we operate in 170 countries around the world. It's a Chinese-based company, but like I said, we operate in 170 countries around the world. It's a big company, right? And so I sort of oversee corporate affairs in Canada. So what that means is, even though Huawei is like a tech company, I'm not actually like a scientist or an engineer. I'm a lawyer. So I sort of work on the regulatory side, on the communication side, on sort of addressing the range of non-technical, non-sciencey sort of challenges and opportunities that Huawei faces. So that's sort of my background. And in terms of kind of Canada and sort of how we as a company see Canada and how I think, you guys as sort of prospective students might want to think about Canada, I think there's a few inherent advantages to our post-secondary education system. So one is, obviously Canada has world-class universities at oftentimes, a fraction of the cost of say, the United States. We tend to have an open and generous immigration system, both for people who are currently studying as well as for graduates. So I'll give an example. I actually went to university. I'm a Canadian, but I went to university in the UK. And then when I graduated, I found it very difficult to actually apply for a job in the UK. They needed me to kind of go back to apply for a visa. It was all very convoluted. I didn't know anything about immigration law. Canada's not at all like this, right? So if you're studying in Canada as a foreign student, there's no real restrictions on your ability to pursue co-ops or summer jobs during your degree, and you can apply to remain in Canada and become a kind of a landed immigrant, a permanent resident from within Canada, right? Once you've had all your Canadian experience. So it tends to be a very open and generous immigration system for people who studied here, and that's not the case in other places with good universities. And I think also what I've found is that the employers in Canada, sort of the big companies operating in Canada, like hiring foreign educated students, right? I'm sorry, students from abroad, right? Like they're used to going through the immigration system. This is not like a weird thing for them. And so as a result, you tend to get a lot of foreign graduates who work in Canadian universities. Who come from Canadian universities. So I think it's a great place to consider if you're considering studying abroad, or if you're considering studying in a STEM field, right, a science and engineering field. We'll see a little bit about Huawei and what we do in Canada. So what Huawei does globally and what it's sort of known for is making what's called network equipment. So network equipment is sort of the stuff that you'll see in your cell phone towers, right? So if you sort of walk around the streets, you turn on your phone, you call someone, that signal will bounce off of a cell phone tower that you'll typically see on the top of buildings. What Huawei does is historically we've manufactured the equipment that goes into those towers, right? So your local telecom provider will buy equipment from either us or one of our competitors, like an Ericsson or like a Nokia. But Huawei kind of does a lot more than that. So we now produce smartphones. So if you're in the Middle East or Africa or Asia, you've almost certainly come across Huawei smartphones, Huawei laptops, Huawei earbuds. We operate more in sort of the software space, cloud computing. And so really everywhere where there's like tech that's happening, we tend to at least explore the wisdom of operating in that space. And in terms of sort of the scale of our company, in terms of just patents, we're the top patent filer globally, right? And we've been for a few years. And so there's a lot of innovation that happens within Huawei in terms of intellectual property creation. It's where a lot of like cutting edge research happens. So in terms of what is it that we are, and what we do in Canada. So like I said, we have 200,000 employees abroad. We have about 1,800 employees, 16 to 1,800 employees here in Canada. So not a huge amount, but we still punch above our weight in the research community. We're one of the top 22 spenders on R&D here in Canada. We sold network equipment to all of the main kind of Canadian operators, but our global operations are obviously much larger than our Canadian operations, which, even on a good year, make up 1% of kind of the global Huawei footprint. But in terms of some of the, I would say some of the things that our researchers are turning their mind towards, and what our business is turning our mind towards the future. And this is kind of getting you a sense of what kind of graduates of universities who choose to work for us or our competitors will probably end up working on. It's things like this. So intelligent vehicles, right? So, there's all these, as car companies, we call them OEMs, right? Whether it's BMW or Tesla or Volvo or Volkswagen. So we don't operate in that space. But what we have started to do is providing the software and the operating systems that power those vehicles, or that power parts of those vehicles, right? Because vehicles are increasingly becoming more technology focused rather than like an actual human being that's doing the work. And so the sort of the tech that's behind those manufactured cars has to be produced by tech companies. So we're entering that space, and we're doing a lot of research in that space. And we've already started collaborating with vehicle manufacturers in China, but also licensing our technology to vehicle manufacturers in the EU. We're getting involved in smart ports, right? So anyone who's sort of been following the business press knows that one of the big issues that's happening globally is you have these supply chain shortages, right? It's you're having congestion in ports around the world. This is leading to kind of the difficulty of businesses to actually like get products to sell to people, and we're realizing the importance of these like global ports in our kind of our global economy, into global trade. So Huawei is sort of operating now in making ports more intelligent, right? So better connecting, we're doing more research that better connects vehicles with the actual port, so you have fewer queuing delays and a more efficient operation, just to sort of grease the wheels of global trade. We're getting more involved in consumer products and software. We're getting more involved in the cloud. So right now, I think Huawei would be the number 5 globally in infrastructure as a service in terms of cloud computing. And Huawei is often in the news for things related to 5G. We've actually started doing R&D into 6G, right? So this is taking taking connectivity beyond just high bandwidth kind of solutions. And so I think I kind of mentioned that mainly to underscore the following point that you may want to think about when you are in university or when you are thinking of applying to jobs, which is you kind of want to ask, where is the innovation happening, and do I want to kind of be there, right? Because I think there's a tendency for people to assume that a lot of innovation happens in startups, right? In these like small companies in Silicon Valley, where you kind of are going around in a hoverboard or whatever, whatever the whatever the stereotypical image is, but that's actually not the case, right? Most of the global innovation that happens is happening in large companies, because only large companies have the billions of dollars that's necessary to do the research and development work to pursue kind of bleeding edge, cutting edge research. And so if you want to be at sort of the forefront of science, but in a company, not in a university, it's often going to end up having to be not just a big company, but probably an Asian big company, right? Because if you think about the top patent filers globally, Huawei is number 1. I think Samsung is number 2. Sony would be up there. LG is up there. These are companies that are based in Asia, where I think the R&D budgets just tend to be higher. And so as you're thinking, in your studies about what sort of company is the best fit for you, or what sort of industry is the best fit for you, don't just assume that all the exciting things happen in Silicon Valley. In fact, a lot of the really exciting things happen in large companies. I think the second sort of thought that I would share is to not underestimate the importance of being a generalist, right? What I've found working not just at Huawei, but in other sort of large private companies, is that the strongest workers tend to be those who combine different skills, right? So it's the engineer who understands accounting, right? Or the lawyer who understands physics, or the physicist who speaks a foreign language, right? Can speak the language of either the headquarters or an important customer. And so, when you're pursuing your studies at university, yes, you have your majors, yes, you're focused on one things, but try to think about what are some complementary things that you can also pursue that will make you, that will give you a more unique skill set when you kind of combine them together. I think that's probably one of the things that I have found with some of our strongest kind of younger employees. They tend to have the thing that they studied, but also something kind of unusual or odd that they've also kind of maybe a cross training that they've done. So those are sort of, I would say, my high level thoughts. I won't go on too long, but I'll sort of probably end by making a few general points about the tech sector globally, right? Which is that, it's no secret that like now is a time of real sort of tension between different powers around the world. I found at Huawei, we are obviously kind of at the center of it, certainly the US-China trade fight. But we're not unique in that, right? If you think about Facebook, right? Facebook is often in the news for spreading fake news, right? And enabling conspiracy theories to spread. Other tech companies are also often in the news for their products doing something that policymakers don't like, right? Or that the public doesn't like, or that the public thinks is not pro-social, right? Think of like gaming, right? Gaming websites. And so I think that increasingly what we're finding, or what I'm noticing, is that it doesn't matter what tech company you're in or what global company you're in, you're often having to operate in a complicated global environment, a complicated political environment, a complicated geopolitical environment, a complicated regulatory environment, right? Like I said, Huawei is in 170 countries around the world. That's 170 different regulatory systems with 170 different sets of rules that apply to us. And so, as I think you guys enter the job market, after your studies, whenever those conclude, there's no way to escape that sort of that tense regulatory politicized environment, right? If you want to work in the big leagues, if you want to work for kind of a global multinational, whether it's a US-based global multinational or an Indian-based global multinational or a Chinese-based global multinational, as I work for an EU-based global multinational, there's no way to just narrowly pursue the sort of your technical skill set within a company. You have to be able to nimbly operate amongst these global trends and these global tensions. And so, I would say, as kind of a final piece of parting thoughts before I wrap up, to read the papers, be aware of what's happening around the world, be able to answer questions on it, and try to think about how what you're studying in university, or the sort of the industries that you're thinking of working in, or the companies you're thinking of working for, interact with that global environment, because it will make you a much stronger candidate, not only on the job market, but also when you end up in one of these companies, better able to provide kind of the high level advice that is sort of the pathway to rapid advancement within those companies. So that's sort of it for me, unless folks have any questions. Happy to answer any questions. But other than that, I'm really glad that to have had the opportunity to speak with you. I hope you found the sessions today helpful. Hope you found this a little bit helpful. And I'm on LinkedIn, Ali Canvelshi. Don't ever hesitate to reach out to me on LinkedIn and just send me a private message in case you have any questions. But with that, I'll leave you to the rest of your sessions. I hope you have a great day. Thank you.